Hey everyone, this is the second half of our data center mixed bag chat that Branden and I had just last month. Hope you guys enjoy it, and remember, get down those comments and tell us what you think. We'd love to hear from you. And now on to the show. Let's talk about firewalls, because I think that this is something that we both, for a variety of things, have been kind of working with. But we have pretty big, complex firewalls at home, right?
Kind of complex.
I mean, complex that rival a standard business.
I mean, fair enough.
But we've also had experience in big business of things like Checkpoint and Palo, stuff like that. So, what's your favorite? Let's start there. What's your go-tos business wise?
Yeah.
What's your stayaways business wise?
I'm gonna lean back. I don't have enough experience to call it a business one. I worked with Checkpoints. Mm-hmm. They are good. They are also the Cadillac of all firewalls, and they come with that price tag.
Yeah,
they're $70K to $140K a piece,
right?
And they're doing data loss protection. They're doing super high level stuff. They're getting all their updates on bad IPs directly from Checkpoint. You get all that extra validation that the Checkpoint security engineers have gone through, so that you don't have to go through that, stuff like that. My only experiences with Checkpoint, I'm sure there are other good stuff out there. Palo Alto, I know, good firewalls.
Big fan of Pans. Yeah,
Cisco's are kind of they're not bad, but they're not good.
I wouldn't actually. That's one thing that Cisco's been really poor about is keeping their firewall products on par with Pans
the rest of the world
and with Checkpoints and the big players in the market.
Well, and I know FortiGates have been really big, and Sophos is out there too. There's even a home version of Sophos you can use.
Okay, I do not buy a FortiGate. Do not.
No, you don't buy a Sonic Wall. Those are the ones that
I honestly think that Sonic Wall, as of late, I would go.
Dude, they've been getting.
But Fortinet has had just some extremely egregious issues with security to the point where you're like, you know what? You clearly, I know you're a firewall and you're supposed to be the thing that protects the network. You're not protecting the network.
You don't seem very good at that.
Yeah, so you might want to go not do that. But you don't feel comfortable making decisions on the enterprise or business side. What about home? What's your home lab?
Oh, home lab, OpenSense, PFSense. If you
You're
want
a Sense guy.
Yeah, if you want to go with the quicker, quicker patch cycle, quicker kernel cycles of OpenSense, definitely go with it. I prefer PFSense. I like what Netgate does. I like the stuff that they've gone through. I have some nice integrations with PF Blocker, and I understand how it works now at a point that it's just what I want. Again, I like PFSense. I know how it works. I have had lots of experience with it. It's definitely a slower kernel passing process. So unless you upgrade to the PFSense Plus, which I know has been kind of controversial with people. Some people are worried.
There's a lot of controversy around
the community edition is going to disappear.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's funny. People have their loyalties and things that they're upset about, and I just kind of avoid the stuff. But
yeah, and I mean, I like it. It kind of rolls. They just updated to the FreeBSD kernel 14 in their latest release of Plus, and I think community is not far behind. But again, my PFSense box has just been stable. I haven't had to worry about anything. I do my patches, it comes back up. Life's good. I don't have to think too much about it, and I can pull lots of stuff and shove it into Grafana and get nice all sorts of map. I can map out where people's IPs are coming from and all that, and kind of see some high level stuff like that. So it's PFSense for me at home for sure.
Yeah.
What about you? Do you have a business recommendation with all your network experience?
It always comes down to use case and how much money you got. So currently I live in a world of Palo Alto networks. And before this, I had not had the pleasure, and I don't mean that sarcastically, not the pleasure of working with PAN products. And it changed my understanding of what enterprise grade edge security is. It is just like the checkpoints. I just want to be clear. All of these big heavy hitters have essentially feature parity. They've got their active updates for malicious IP addresses and malicious sites and all this kind of let's say you're doing your SSL decrypt where people are going out to Google, and when it hits the firewall blows it apart because it pretends to be you and re-signs it with an internal cert that your computer trusts, and then it's seen the inside of it, which is key for protecting against SSL encrypted websites. But the thing about the PAN is that the hardware, it's stunning. And I know that the checkpoint stuff, when you get into the bigger stuff, and the PAN stuff is still I'm sitting on a set of $100,000 plus pairs right now, and we're looking at buying another set because we want to be able to get more functionality. I came into a company that was running Fortinet, and it was, for me, the most brain-breaking approach to firewalls with their VDOMs and their it didn't when we had problems with the Fortinet, it was basically like I felt like I'd reverted to a caveman. I'm just beating it with stones because I don't understand no more. Like the whole concept of okay, I understand what firewall rules are. I understand how these things relate. I understand what you get with checkpoints, what you get with palos, stuff like that. Which is like, no, are you sure you're in the right VDOM? Well, how's that interacting with other VDOMs? Like it doesn't even look like I'm speaking the same language. And there's been a lot of the company that I work for had a history of really hard starts with when they went into Fortinet stuff, and then seeing all the stuff in the news happening to Fortinet, I don't necessarily feel like it's a safe bet until they get their act together. I would never recommend it. I think it's just dangerous. But all day long, if you can afford a PAN or a checkpoint, then do it. It just depends on who you want your master to be. Well, if you want, since Palo Alto's a U.S. company and Checkpoint's Israeli company, just choose where you want who you want your source of your information to come from. Maybe.
Well, yeah, and don't discount Netgate. I've not used them in a professional sense, but they do offer, professional boxes, professional not professional firmware.
Okay,
but,
that's fair.
Full firmware, and they'll support you in P1, P2 incidents. Sure. They'll be able to help you out with that. So I wouldn't throw them out as the open source. They're actually a company that's behind the open sourceness.
Yeah, I think that where I start to break down the stuff is of differentiation on that is that if you're a company that needs or can afford to have that quality of infrastructure, you're also looking for all the additional functionality that they offer out of the box.
True.
And on top of that, their management experience is better. Like if you go with either one of those big firewall companies, there's I hate to say this because it's a verboten term, but single pane of glass, centralized management. I don't even know if Netgate
they
offers.
do. It's called TensorFlow, and
I thought that was just routing.
It's a little bit different. You have to do some extra work, which is kind of defeats the purpose, right? Sure. It's supposed to be I have my cloud instance. I hook up my firewalls to my cloud instance, right. And I can make sure that all my IPs go to the right places.
Sure.
I wouldn't count them out. They're great for small, medium businesses. I don't think they're quite enterprise ready.
Yeah.
Maybe all the way. They're small, medium enterprise. They're not ready, to do those big things like DPL. That's something that's a plugin. DLP. Sorry. Yeah. Day loss prevention. That's a plugin you have to add to pfSense, but it comes out of the box.
I'm surprised that they have DLP functionality. That's interesting to know. Because DLP is a complicated thing. So, how are you reading that information? How are you following what you're doing? Classification tagging is for it. Where does that come from? So
your intrusion detection systems and your prevention systems and stuff like that. Yeah, again, plugins to pfSense come naturally with Checkpoint.
Sure.
You just turn on the feature or buy the license, and it's in.
I would, if I could afford. So the downside of things like Checkpoint or PAN and why you don't see them in home labs for the most part is because once those licenses expire, they basically become inert boxes.
Yeah.
They might do basic firewall stuff, but you're going to get the same level of basic firewall stuff that you're going to get from something like pfSense or even Ubiquity stuff, where you're just rule blocking and stuff like that. And that is really, I think the big shame with those things is that, the gear costs lots of money. You invest in that gear, you buy it for 3, 5, whatever your lifespan is, and then you're spending $15-20K a year on all the bits and bobs and features and cool stuff like that. But once you stop paying for that, it's gone, and that's not great. Including the IDS, IPS signatures and things like that to detect when somebody's trying to get through or that kind of stuff. And if you can get that from open source tools, or you can get it from plugins that don't have a whole bunch of costs involved. Mm-hmm. I mean, at home, I'm using pfSense too.
Yeah, and at home, you can spend the time to install the plugins and configure the plugins you want, and make all your household members angry because you blocked all their internet access by accident.
Blocking the TikToks.
If you install one at Saracata or Snort, turn on the detection or the warning mode. Or is it intrusion prevention, intrusion detection?
Right.
Yeah. Turn on that before you turn on the prevention. because it'll just block things.
You have to train it, you have to teach it.
You have to train it. So like, make sure you sit around for a week and make sure you have time to go through those rules, because they're a beast to handle, and they'll just immediately be like, oh, Google, and just cancel Google.
All
and all
those
sorts of things like that. So make sure you spend some good time training and alerting on your side, so you don't spend all your internet turn all your internet off for everyone.
What you hear is a man who's been through some pretty harrowing times.
I turned it on and I walked away, and then I looked at my Google Home and it was like, I can't find the internet, and I was like, oh no, I know what I did.
Your girlfriend and your roommate are like, look, dude, you gotta fix this right now.
And I'm like, oh, okay, and I just turned it off, and then I haven't turned it on since. It just hangs out.
Right. Yeah. Those traditional IDS IPS tools, you always have to do that. That's the downside. Like a lot of these bigger companies, they have like automated learning processes that when you activate those things, they learn automatically. They do not go into immediate block mode, but they also are very aggressive in how they learn, and they build really logical, quick maps of what is normal traffic and what's not, and then you can activate them quickly. Whereas the open source stuff, you can get there, you can 100% get there, but you're going to get there by hand.
Yeah, and a little more by hand than you probably need to.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's free.
Yeah.
Free as in beer. So if you got the time, then you can build yourself that sort of stuff. And I see pfSense and OpenSense as a great solution for people who have computer hardware that they want to utilize. Because I don't have any experience. I know that like Radal and others are big actual hardware, Netgate hardware fans. And I got a buddy who lives close to me who he's also bought that hardware for family members, right? So I don't have any experience with buying that gear, because my first answer for this is like, I have hardware, I have virtualization, I will do this myself, because that's what you do.
Yeah.
And
as much as I don't like the Ubiquiti stuff, like in terms of layer 3 routing, if one of my family members came and they said, hey, I need a thing that just goes out to the internet, I'd give them a UDM. Yeah. It's easy. You plug it in and it works.
Yeah, you're talking about the little UDM trash can.
Yeah, the little the new Mac trash can, if you will.
The miniature Mac trash can, because that's
like,
big. I think
the UDM router or whatever. Yeah. Those are great, because all you want to do is make sure this subnet is protected from the internet, and it's that low level stuff. It's when you need to do reverse proxies, or you want to have a DMZ or things like that.
You're hosting stuff.
I know you can do it. Techno-Tim does it with his stuff, but I don't like it. It just didn't work out for me.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that either. I think that, but and even though I did hardcore poop on Meraki just a little bit ago, I think that their router gear, their firewall gear is not so bad. But the downside of that, there's a licensing fee. It's not too expensive depending on what you get, but it's, if you want a cool and sexy dashboard like you get with Ubiquiti, but it's anywhere in the world and cloud hosted, then Meraki's not a bad choice either. But
it's fair enough.
If you were looking to, let's say you had a small business like a coffee shop or a small company, it would be nice to put in one or two Meraki APs, put a Meraki firewall there like an MX, and then you have a turnkey singular solution for handling everything.
And I think that's one of the big things with Ubiquiti is most of those places would hand that off to an MSP.
Right.
And the MSP can just install your Ubiquiti router, install you a few APs, and be done, and not have to, they can watch it from there and fix what they need to.
And that's exactly what that's like the right solution for that sort of situation. So, but in a big company, I
would you virtualize your firewall again? Because that we went back and forth. I originally started with a hardware firewall, and then Rich told me that was dumb, and I should use a virtual firewall. And then I did use a virtual firewall for a while, and then I had some failover stuff, and I moved to a hardware thing, and then I convinced Rich that the software firewall was dumb, and we're at a hardware. Both have hardware firewalls right now.
Yeah. I think that I learned a hard lesson. There's a video about that. Check in the top right corner for that video. I'm kidding. I mean, we did make a video, but I learned a hard lesson, and that was that when you have a firewall that is software, so just for clarification, because we're using mixing terms here, but pfSense is running on FreeBSD.
Yeah,
that is a Unix operating system. It is a OS. And it is I'm sure they're paring it down, but it'll run on a potato.
It's an appliance OS that'll run on
Sure,
hardware.
It's been pared down,
and it'll run on virtual hardware too. And it's supported by Netgate. Netgate has a how-to to install an ESXi.
And I'm not. Yeah, it's running a virtualized firewall is not a non-recommended mode.
No,
but I know that pfSense and OpenSense are specifically tied to the CPU clocks.
Okay,
and single thread CPU.
That's the big.
And so for you, if you have a virtualization environment like I had, where I had my sockets were 2.4 gigahertz, but it's a shared environment, that meant that I could never get my 10 gig throughput because I just couldn't sling packets.
And when we're talking 10 gig throughput, we're talking between VLANs. That was where we caught, if you go watch our video, we had some stuff where we were getting like 10 gig if we were on the same subnet, but the minute we tried to jump to a subnet, a different subnet where pfSense started to do rule checking, started to do some more processing as it tried to move things and route things over, it just tanked down to 3 or 4 gig, which, you know, we want to go fast.
Right. And the astute of you out there will say, well, that's because you're doing it wrong. You should have a layer 3 router that you're using for inter-VLAN traffic, because those are running on ASICs. They're super fast. There's no latency. There's no clock connection. But you can't do effective filtering through between VLANs or subnets if you're using a layer 3 router, because that takes processing, like you're saying. So long story short, the realization came that I needed to have a physical hardware. I bought a Sophos and reinstalled it because it's running a regular CPU, an Intel CPU in it. So that helped me unlock a lot more power, because I could dedicate a physical CPU to just that. And that was the game-changing event, right?
Yeah.
That fixed all those problems.
And that's what my R440 does. It's a glorified, I had extra RAM, so I threw extra RAM in it, and it just sits there and slings packets all day.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing with that realistically is that I never knew I had a problem there
until
because my internet was 1 gigabit. So I was like, what am I going to get? I could never saturate that, and I couldn't at that. Like, my CPU clock was fast enough for that. But once I really started to look at why can't I transfer data between these two VLANs, between my corporate, my home network, my main LAN,
CorpNet,
and my DMZ where my Nextcloud server was. That was like, oh my gosh, I can't. Why does it take so long?
Yeah, and I would say a couple of things, though. If you do want to virtualize your firewall, you can totally do it. I think you should understand a couple of things. That one, in some ways, you are exposing your hypervisor to the World Wide Web. Understand
Depending how you built it.
Yeah, sure. That can be a security issue if that's misconfigured. And I fully recommend having 2 or more hosts so that you can jump around. You know, have your firewall be moving around in time. And with VMware, you need a vCenter for that. With XCP-ng, you need a Xen Orchestra for that. Just make sure that you have those orchestration capabilities, because no one likes to have their internet shut down for ESXi updates or anything else.
That's Brandon's right. Whereas if you have a standalone firewall, you can do all your other stuff and everything stays up and running. No one's coming at you with pitchforks and torches. So that's it. So we should probably put a pin in that, because we're just talking tons about. So I guess the TLDR is that for Homelab for home, you would go
pfSense or OpenSense,
all the way through and through.
Pick one. I'm sure there's other stuff too. Check out the VIA OS project. It's really cool.
I've heard it's relatively complicated setup. It's all command line, isn't it?
It is command line interface. It's driven there. They're working on stuff like that. It's definitely in its early stages, but it's a full cloud-based router that you can, have full control over, install locally, connect to clouds, full command line orchestrated router. It's just really cool to see, another project give a go at it. It's all Linux based. You don't have to worry about FreeBSD if that's not your cup of tea.
Is it open source?
It is. Open source and on the GitHubs.
On the GitHubs. Get in there and get yourself.
Or is it on GitLabs? I don't remember. But
it's
the
on
Gits.
The Git something. It's on the Gits.
So we have all this infrastructure.
Yeah.
And it's all running a bunch of things to do, but it probably needs some power. You want to talk about physical infrastructure?
Yeah, I think we should cap this off with a conversation about definitely about UPSs, PDUs, cabinets, all that kind of stuff, because that's so we have personal opinions about favorites, right? I hate to say it, but I've in the data center, I've always spent my time with APC and Schneider, right?
Yeah,
Schneider Electric owns APC, so it's one and the same.
Yeah, I like Eaton's. They're fine.
Yeah, Eaton's are fine.
Eaton's are good. I like APCs as well. I bought a CyberPower, don't buy a CyberPower.
I have one under my desk, and as a side note, when the batteries are dead in it, when there's a brownout, not only does it die because it's not even a glorified capacitor, but it also causes enough of a brownout on my circuit for some reason that it kills the breaker. Nice. And I'm like, okay, I have to get rid of this thing.
Yeah.
Not good.
They had a problem where the glue they used for some of the batteries was thermally conductive and would light up on fire. And so I don't have the model that did that, but the fact that was an option kind of turned me off from CyberPower stuff.
Is that you said it's an option, as in like, do I have to be like, I want the emoliate cell option?
No, but like it's something they did on certain models.
Yeah.
And so
certain models I would watch out, but kids, don't buy those.
Eaton owns Triplite. Triplites are really good HomeLab starters.
Yeah, for sure.
Same thing if you can find some low-level APCs. If you get into the data center, you get a cool thing called Stuxnet. And Stuxnet is where you take all your PDUs and you hook them up to a little virtual server you run. It'll tell you all your outputs, everything that's running, how much current's coming off of it, if any devices are being weird.
Yeah.
And so it's super helpful again at the enterprise level. I like that on my level you can just hit the web interface of an APC and be able to like see your power usage and see how many watts you're pulling and all that. Fun fact, if you're installing them in a garage like I am, install them in a non-GFCI outlet.
See, I guess I've got
because your APC will send a neutral signal to check for current. And it can sometimes trigger your GFCI as there is current being sent back, and so
as you do,
and GFCI is doing its job protecting it. It just doesn't need to. So, little like note there. If we don't have to go up to 208 or 240 volt,
right? I mean, if you can, you should. Like, I mean, so like I'm running a 2200 kVA right now, which is a single 2U. I have about 1200 watts of constant load, right? And I'm on 120 volts. So let's throw some math at this, right? So in the United States, everything here by default is 120 volts, not 240 like it is in Europe, which you guys got it better. And what that means is to know what you can have for a maximum load on a circuit, you take your maximum amps of your breaker, which on average in the US is like 15 or 20, right? Mostly 15.
Some old houses got 10 though.
Yeah. So, and then you times that by your voltage, and that's the maximum wattage that you can run on a circuit.
Hold, yeah.
And when we say maximum wattage, that means, friends, that you should only run it at a maximum of 80% of that maximum, because when you run it at 100%,
hard fucking limit.
If you are above that 80%, you will in effect the breaker will overheat and it will eventually fail.
Give up.
It's not that's your buffer range. Yes, you can run it. Your conductors in the wall are not going to catch fire and burn your house down, but you won't have reliable power. So 80% is where you're supposed to be. So I'm actually running on a 20 amp circuit.
Yeah.
Because I needed that extra buffer. It's there sometimes I'm getting too close. And
I don't have that problem. I have a 20 amp circuit and I'm only at like 1,000 maybe during load.
You have less gear than I do though.
Yeah.
Which is fine. You're getting everything you need done in less gear. I have been kind of, and we're kind of going off on a little bit of a tangent, but I've been kind of starting to think about, not reevaluate, I want to be clear, but think about like what the appropriate amount of power consumption should be for a home labber, and like what should I have versus what I have.
And like, what do you need? Because like I love enterprise hardware. I love, we talked about the sexy rack look and all that. Yeah. Like that's just what I like personal. What do I need? I need like 5 optiplexes that run together. I don't need
a few Raspberry Pis.
Right? Like I could probably get away with a Raspberry Pi now. Like I don't know. Need went out the window a while ago for me. This is because I want it.
Yeah, there's an obsession part of like doing this at home where like it's kind of taking your work home with you.
Yeah,
like
100%.
The things that you enjoy about it, but also like just like knowing that depending on what your needs are, like in the beginning and still somewhat to this day, and I know for you too, the home lab was a way to learn and be prepared that when you go to work, you can be like, I know how to do this and I know how to do it and save the company money and be awesome about it. And they're like, oh, I like that guy, give him a raise. So there was like this feedback loop, and there still is a feedback loop for that stuff. But when I'm burning 1,200 watts an hour, and my home lab costs by itself, numbers are relative. They're based on how much your power consumes. But I did the math, and on average, every month, the home lab itself cost me $86 in electricity.
Yeah, mine's about 60 or 80, depending on
and that's for a lot of people. I mean, in Europe, power is way more expensive than
yeah.
Like,
we're paying like 11,
average 11 cents, and that's with me paying for the green power too. Which so sometimes it's 13 cents an hour kilowatt hour, and sometimes it's 9 cents. Well, I mean, depending on the time of day. But
from the couple friends I have in Europe, it's 30 cents, it's 40 cents, maybe with the conversion.
Right. It's the kind of cost that people don't have giant server racks because it's not cost effective.
Yeah, you lose that ability. But I think we got a great Discord message where it was from Rich, our CFO here at 2GT, decided that there was maybe a little too much cost on the with the good old home lab, and so we started to reevaluate that, at least at HQ here.
Well, yeah, I mean that actually came from the wife of Rich, who's like, we're spending $400 on power every month, and of course, my wife's response is, that must be this giant rack of gear. I'm like, hold on.
Well, it is. I mean, but it's not all of it.
It's part of that. It's also like, the computers that stay on 24/7 because no one shuts them off. So I mean, the value I get from it, obviously, I think is justifiable, right?
Yeah.
But it's, for a lot of people, it's not justifiable, and they're not getting that same opportunity to self-host or to learn, experiment, and do stuff. So I am personally struggling with what is an appropriate amount of power consumption for a home lab, and I haven't found that answer yet. Yeah. Ask me later, and I'll say I still have a giant rack of servers because I can't.
Well, and I think the good thing we've talked about is, like, minus the storage we use specifically for YouTube, the majority of our stuff could probably be hosted on one box.
Yeah. If
not, one or two. We have more because we're extra like that, but the majority of stuff is, if you get, my good candidate for like the single home lab box, if you're trying to save power, is find yourself a Dell, what are they, Precision T like 5820s that have four drives in the front. You can load those 4 drives with some high terabyte disk, drop a couple SSDs in there to keep going, and you've got one box that can crank out all your networking. It can be the maybe that dangerous virtualize your router thing or not, but you could do these things with one desktop PC and a little what are they called, Protectili router or whatever. You don't need to have the 42U rack that Rich has or the 22U rack I have.
You need it.
Unless you want to join us.
Join us.
Not everyone.
One of us.
I've been told by my significant other that not everyone enjoys the wee of a server rack for the bass noise of their house.
Human beings are surprisingly incredibly adaptive creatures, and eventually you just stop hearing that noise.
Oh, funny enough, her work got 2 new servers. She didn't even notice them. The whole office was complaining about them, but she didn't even it didn't register on her radar that awesome. Something was there.
Yeah, that's fine. So okay, so we're talking about data center gear, and there's or physical hardware. There's obviously power consumption. And the way that I first would recommend that everybody find a way to have a battery backup or some sort of protection. Not just because when the power goes out,
we kind of glossed over the use of a UPS.
Right, yeah, exactly.
So yeah, not when the power goes out, but like we actually have really good power where we are in Oregon.
We're lucky about
that.
But
every now and then there's brownouts, there's dips in power, and having something that can keep that current, even if it's just for a minute or two, is really helpful.
Sure.
Every now and then I get like an email being like, "Hey, I went on battery power," and then it will tell me, "Hey, I went back to grid power." It's to cover those things. It also helps with spikes too on the other end. So if your power is supposed to be somewhere between 100 and 127 volts, at least in the US, delivered to your house, and sometimes it gets out of that range.
A lot.
And that's the UPS is helping you compensate for that while also giving all your devices a nice, at least in the newer ones, a nice clean sine wave of power, if you will. Definitely worth having. Definitely, they all have $500,000 warranties on them because they try
that actually pays off, or people actually. I think that's more of a marketing. They're like,
I think it is, but I don't think they have to do it enough because if your UPS saves you that one time, it's all that matters.
Yeah, if it dies saving you, then it's like it's paid for itself. But Yeah. So like in big infrastructure, I think that because the companies who are making the big Symmetras and the big like enterprise power systems and that are actually a lot smaller than you would think they are, because they have generators that kick in after. The batteries are only there to help the time it takes for that or the generator to come online. So there's a big difference in that, but you'll find that all those people are making the same gear all the way down the consumer level, because people need batteries for things.
Yeah.
So if you're running that stuff, I think that personally I would go with APC or Trip Light, somebody like that for UPS.
Yeah, we're in person to that. Right? The nice thing is, like at the colo I'm at, you just you get asked for a rail. You say, I want a rail of this many kilowatts or this much voltage, and they'll bring it to you. Amps, that's what it was. Right. Maybe here's your 40 amp rail, and they just load it in. You plug in your UPS, you plug in your PDU, and you're done. You don't have to worry about the battery maintenance. You have to worry about the other side. It's part of the service. Really, really slick that you can just call in how much amps you need, and it'll get it done. Yeah,
we've been talking about battery backups, UPS, that kind of stuff. So let's change gears and talk about like cabinets and physical like things that hold gear. I know you said that you're running a 24U. I think you said cabinet, but you said
it's a rack. It's a rack. Yeah, I think it's a 22U nav point rack or something like that.
So you don't have sides and a top and a bottom.
No, yeah, basically.
it's just four posts.
Four posts. I've got a nice rack shelf at the top so I can put things on it, but like that's about it.
Yeah, and downstairs in the data center here, I've got a 42U 8-foot full-on APC net shelter cabinet, which has got doors, big metal doors on both sides, and
side panels and all that, so you can actually direct the airflow. That's the big idea behind the cabinets, is that you can push cold air from the front and warm air from the back. In theory, yeah, because
everything is typically exhausting front to back.
Yeah.
Right. So the back is where you would collect it. And in a big, like the last data center that we built that I was part of, like there was a hot aisle in the middle, and it was enclosed, so all the UPSs, or excuse me, all the servers and everything pulled air through the fronts of the cabinets were facing outward, and in the center they exhausted out the hot air, which is there's lots of different ways. You can take the cold aisle in the middle and exhaust outward, or be the cold aisles on the outside and exhaust in to a center thing. But and that's obviously above and beyond. Like, or if you're in a colo, you don't need to worry about it at all.
Yeah, they tell you what your cold and your hot aisle is, and that's all you need to worry about.
Or they just give you a cabinet and they have like 100-foot ceilings where they just exhaust the heat out the back and it just goes up to this massive hot air open space that then they pull in and cool off and raised floor cooling, or they blow it up from the bottom. But but at home, square holes are
Yeah, the new thing I think we need to try are rack studs.
I will not.
You won't do it? Okay.
I will not do it. He
likes pinching his hands with the normal ones.
Brand's talking about, in a square hole rack, you use what are called captive nuts. Yeah. And a captive nut is basically a nut that has a metal, flexible piece of thin metal around it that you push in, and it clips into the square hole, and then you screw through the front of the rack rail. And
the tension brings them together.
And it holds it tight, right? And they can be, that's the joke. Like you'll see memes where people are like, my hands, because they're like putting in these captive nuts. I know that there's a lot of people. We have a friend who's also big into those, but I don't trust using plastic to hold up like tens of pounds of weight.
People have done tests with 50, 60, 100 pounds, and it worked. They held up. I'm not too worried about it. What I want, hear me out, and if you're out there, we need a standardized quick deploy rail system for servers.
We need open source the Dell Ready rails.
Like the Ready rails, or like the Super Micro ones. Yeah, someone needs to have one, because it is so nice when you just make sure you're on the same U, click, and then you make sure they're locked, and you're done, and it feels so nice.
Yeah, man, it is always heartbreaking when you get a piece of gear and you have to screw it in.
Yeah, those custom servers that I built with the Super Micro boards. Nope, had to screw them in. They're so annoying.
Pour one out. That's rough.
Yeah,
that is rough.
But either way, I mean, you can get a small rack, big rack. You can mount it on the wall. That's, I know, very popular. A lot of the network racks, though, the thing that caught me up is with the network racks are short depth.
Right.
So they can't always do the full 31 inches that can hold a server in there. Sure. So make sure when you're buying one on eBay that you did that, because I bought my first one and had to send it back because it was way too short to hold any servers I had.
I'm sure that Amazon just gave you all that money back without any problem.
They honestly did. They just
nice.
took it, and I think I ate like the shipping cost, and that was it. So
yeah, the other thing with those racks, and I've seen people do this, and you just got to be careful. Like you can get orientations where the wall mounts are vertical. Mm-hmm. You'll find a lot of like switching gear, like if you get CP or customer premise equipment, they'll be vertically mounted so they can cut down the amount of space in the wall. Mm-hmm. Don't mount a server that way because it pulls air from the top and blows out the bottom, and hot air just comes right back up and gets sucked back into the server, and you create this little convection engine that ends up causing some super nightmares. But yeah, you learn that the hard way. Not me. Yeah. I've been like, you did what? No, that's how convection. Don't do that. How convection works. So, I guess the following the same kind of like format that we've been talking about for the other parts here. Like, I don't think there is much of a differentiator between like enterprise and HomeLab when it comes to that kind of gear. Because if you're doing servers that are rack mounted, you're going to be using those sort of standardized things, and they're not so expensive. You can get a cheap rack off Craigslist.
And if you go Craigslist, you can find probably some company or data center that is trying to get rid of them because they expanded their stuff, and you can just, for the cost of picking them up, grab one. So keep on the lookout for that. My
rack that's downstairs right now, when it retailed, I think it was like $3,000, and I got it for the cost of a U-Haul. Yeah. So I could get it to my house. And
the new ones are, I don't know why, $3,000 for steel.
Well, and so the other thing is, and this is more of a personal preference thing. I am not a fan of people who are buying these racks that are enclosed fronts that are glass. I think it looks really pretty, but you're blocking like servers exhaust front to back. Don't put something in front of it unless. Hold on. I did work for a company that had those sort of cabinets, and they looked really good. They're really sexy, but they had forced floor cooling. Right? Yeah. So they had a false floor, and it blew cold air up. Yeah. So it was basically an encapsulated box, and then they pulled the hot air out the back, and that was how they did it. But it was a little wiring closet that had this and it was really pretty. It was really neat looking. Mm-hmm. But I want to caution anybody who's thinking about buying one of these because I've seen a lot of YouTubers with these really beautiful rack setups, and they're like really nice with these like glass fronts, but that defeats the purpose of what a cabinet's for, which is to pull in from the front, what's supposed to be cool, and blow it out the back, which is supposed to be hot.
Yeah, fair enough. Design aesthetics are just their value over it. Like, I agree with you. That's the whole point. That's why certain switches will actually have there'll be different colored fans that will pull either from the front or the back.
You have to buy them when you build out the switch.
When you build out the switch, so you can dictate that airflow. So I just think people think, for the amount of the couple of degrees, it may not matter that much to them.
I guess it depends on what happens if you have a runaway temperature event, right?
Or if they have their basement and it's cooler.
Sure.
And it's already cooler from the beginning.
But you're still putting it in a box. Like, take a cold space and something that generates heat and just put it in a sealed box. Just do it. Why not? What's going to happen? So I'm not saying that anybody's doing anything wrong, but that's when you're doing these designs, you're being realistic about it. It's about airflow management and cooling, right? Yeah. And not about necessarily like, this is really pretty I can see the lights blinking behind the glass. I'm like,
blinking lights are best lights.
All you want is green and blue blinking lights. That's it. White's good. No red and no orange.
You don't want red and orange anymore.
No red orange. I mean, just if you have red orange, it's probably because something has failed.
Sure. Your network's running at fast Ethernet speeds. It's fine.
Yeah. Or you've got a dead disk and it's crying out in mercy for help.
The clicky discs are the best ones.
The clicky or the squealy. I'm a big fan of squealy discs. Give me some of those Seagate with those 3 terabyte enterprise drives that just end up just going prompt critical. Anyway,
do you think we run the gambit?
I think we got through it. If you guys think of anything else that you want that we missed, I know that we didn't talk about SANs, we didn't talk about NASs or iSCSI or NFS, SMB share stuff, which is a huge part of it, a huge component. But
we didn't get into vSAN or hyperconverged stuff.
Right, we didn't. We just basically stuck to these are the macro sections.
Yeah.
Right? That covers still a lion's share of everything.
So I think there's so much in there though.
That's for sure.
We didn't talk about mainframes. I might have to go talk to my mainframe admin and see if I can get into some stuff.
Give me an AS400. I'm sure I'll be able to run some Fortran on that bad boy. We'll be moving some bits. So I think we'll call it, right?
Let's call for it. So if you like doing this and you want us to keep doing this, get subscribed. Do we have a membership still?
We do have membership.
At YouTube.
Keep talking here while I
we have a membership. If you want a really cool shirt, check out our merch. Rich is wearing a shirt right now. We don't have hats yet. We're working on it.
Yeah, working on the hats.
And if you guys had a good time, make sure to get into the comics and let us know what you think. If Rich and I are wrong about our favorite vendors or wrong about hardware choices, let us know. We'll make sure we see it. You probably won't change our minds. We're pretty set in our ways, unfortunately.
Change my mind, yeah. I would really love to have this information, but
yeah, and we have a Discord. Check out our Discord and join. Did we update the link?
Yes.
We messed up the link last time. That was my fault.
On the website. Well, I mean, I blame Discord for changing the way they onboard people. So that's
fair.
You can follow on the story if you want, but I think it's Discord's fault. We appreciate it. We hope you guys will check us out next time we talk about this.
Catch you next month.
See ya.